So let's get started if you want. So, oh, oh yes, this is practice. So today we're going to talk about what I call practical practice, um, and really just kind of getting efficient practice routines that help you stay creative, help you stay motivated, and help you achieve goals. So I'll kind of give you a little background on this. Like I said, feel free to leave some comments. I may not get to them right away. After I'm done, we'll have plenty of time for questions and whatnot. So here we go. Um, all right. So the reason that I wanted to talk about this is I think a lot of us um, fail in our goals with actual practice. A lot of times we just sort of, if number one, if we're even in a practice routine at all, a lot of times it's just inconsistent practice, and whenever we have inconsistent practice habits, um, you end up spinning your wheels quite a bit, especially as an educator. I think I'm not an applied teacher. I conduct concert band and jazz band and have meetings and all kinds of things. And now it gets tough. And I remember as a high school band director, that was one of the things that I was much younger and much dumber back then too. Um, but that was one of the things that really I just did not like about teaching high school was it'd be 2 weeks and I wouldn't have touched my horn at all. And I thought, man, I'm not going to get better, and I still want to get better as a musician. So um, I think we end up spinning our wheels quite a bit. We don't practice things. We end up pushing practice back. When we do practice, sometimes we just kind of do this. You're almost in practice limbo, so to speak. So focusing on efficient practice, I think, is super important and really is healthy for your growth as a musician. So um, the first sort of thing that I remember about, like, okay, like when I was practicing, when I got into a practice routine, and I didn't really get into a practice routine until college, when you'd have like jury prep or recital prep, things like that. And especially when it came to recitals, I remember, like, playing some really long solos, and it didn't make sense to play it all the way through and then kind of go back. You walk down the practice, you walk down practice, like the practice room hall at any school of music, and most of the time you're hearing musicians just play short segments. And that was the first thing kind of stuck with me, is like, oh, there's a better way to do this than how I'm doing it. So um, and you get to a point where, especially in grad school, when if you're in a performance degree, like you practicing 3, 4, 5 hours a day, and I've seen a lot of people actually injure themselves by doing that. And I thought, okay, there's got to be a better way to, there's got to be a more efficient way to practice, where you're not playing so much. So one of the biggest things that happened was when I had my first kid. Then all of a sudden, like, doesn't matter what I'm doing or what I want to do, like, kid takes precedence. So if I had 20 minutes to practice, I needed to practice for just 20 minutes. Well, how do I get anything out of practicing for 20 minutes? It takes a lot of efficient practice and a lot of focus. So then when I was in my DMA, I didn't want to get into like, I got into the habit of practicing 4 or 5 hours a day, which was great because I that was the best I felt as a player. Um, but with doctoral research and stuff for ensembles in school, and then teaching, I was an adjunct teacher at the same time, and then playing gigs, and with the expectation that you're going to play at a doctoral level at a conservatory. um, there was a lot that kind of built up quick, and I thought, okay, I've got to really, like, I think the best way for success for me was to get incredibly organized and really get down to the details of what I was doing. So that's what this whole thing is really kind of about today. So the first thing that I do with my students, uh, at the college or private students is if it's with a student at the college, it's a semester to semester basis. So I want them to tell me what their goals are for the semester, and this can actually be any unit of time. So I just have them start with a simple statement: in blank amount of time, I want to blank, and that's some specific type of improvement. And you can apply this to anything you do in life, not just music. So, as a teacher, a semester is a unit of time for us. Maybe it's in a week, in a month, in a year, in 5 years. That could be any amount of time you want to blank. I want to have some specific type of improvement, not just I want to get better. How do you want to get better? What do you want to get better at? This ends up being the long-term goal or the ultimate goal in that amount of time. So it's one thing to state that. Now we've got to come up with some sort of way, some plan to achieve this goal. And by the way, I posted this Google Drive. If you guys see the Google Drive link in the comments, you can go in there. I've kind of got the outline for today to give you kind of an idea of what I'm going to talk about and for you to take and give to your students or whatever, as well as a goal worksheet, kind of what I'm talking about right now, and then a routine template as well, which we'll get into. So, state the ultimate goal, and then I want the student or myself to think about, a couple, at least two. You want to have at least two, hopefully more. You want to have as many ways to achieve that ultimate goal as possible, and you write those down, and those are the short-term goals. So here's what the goal worksheet looks like right here. I've actually got it in 1 year. I don't have that part available. So then 3 things to help me address that long-term goal. And then after that, some more detailed things, 5 things for me to improve on that kind of feed into those three goals, and then any other goals that you want. So there's that's in the drive folder too. So with that, now we can kind of start having a plan of action. And this is all prep work that I have my kids do before we even really start to practice. So they've got specific goals that they want, and as their teacher, especially if I've had them before, if I know what they play like, I've got goals for them as well. So, oftentimes a student in college is going to have multiple goals, but again, take this to any of your students at whatever level. So the next thing I have them do is I make them kind of come up with a general schedule of how their week typically looks. And as musicians, that can kind of change a lot, I know. Luckily, if you've got students that are in school, it might be a little bit more consistent. So here is, when they do this, I want them to write down everything that they do in a week. And I'm hoping that they can, when we write this out, and I usually use like an Excel spreadsheet. I'm a spreadsheet dork when it comes to this, but this is the schedule that I made myself for the spring this year before all the COVID stuff hit. So I make eight columns. First column is just times, 7 a.m. till generally about midnight. Actually, this one's cuts off at 10:30. And then every day of the week. And then I have them fill it out. So everything in Peach is things that I was having to do with the school this year, this semester. And then, from 4 p.m. to 10 p.m., I knew that was going to be family time, whether that meant just playing with the kids, cooking dinner, going out to eat, watching a movie, going to baseball or soccer or basketball practice with the boys. I knew that these are sort of the immovable things. I want to find the immovable things. And for your students, that may be it's probably school and then work, if they have work. So, I know their work schedules change all the time, but if the more consistent they can make it, the better they are. So the reason I like this is now with this schedule, I can kind of look and I get a bird's eye view of what's going on this entire semester over my week. And now I can find all these little holes, all these blank holes. And I was like, okay, these are opportunity. Like some of these are, there's probably 15 minutes on either side of my workday that are dedicated to commuting. There's lunch in there. There's things like that. So I can look in here and I can start to see all these blank holes, and those are opportunities to practice. And I know myself as a teacher, sometimes kids don't come in my office hours. And I've got an office hour every day of the week. I know that those are opportunities where I can sneak in a little bit of practice, whatever it is. So now I've got, I have my students do this, and they're kind of surprised, and, they'll fill it up with like, oh, I play video games from, 9 p.m. to 2 a.m. every day. And that's sort of when you kind of, when you see that amount, you're like, okay, we got to have a talk. If you want to be a musician, here's what you need to do. So anyway, I use a spreadsheet and just fill this out with them, like the first or second lesson. Most of the time, the second lesson, we kind of fill this out so we can kind of come up with a game plan. Now, once we do this, hopefully there's some time every day that we can squeeze in some practice. I keep saying squeeze, and I shouldn't say squeeze in practice. Hopefully there's time every day that we can practice. Some days there's going to be more time available. Some days there's going to be less. That's inevitable. So I keep saying squeeze, and it's because I don't want you to try and squeeze it in. That's not a positive mindset to have when you practice. If you're squeezing it in, it starts to feel like a burden, and that's when you stop doing it. You start making excuses to not do it. So there's that. So with this schedule that I've got up here, let me make sure I'm mirrored, so I'm over here on the right here, or I can make this just a little bit smaller. There we go. Now I can start to look and find things. So in my practice sessions, I like to kind of break it up into two different sections. One of them is my routine. Your warm-ups, your daily exercises, maintenance routine, whatever you want to call it. I'm not going to get into the semantics of it, but I've got that routine, and then I've got sort of the second section is sort of my content area, and we'll get into those a little bit more in deeper detail. But that routine is super important, and that's the thing that if there's anything that happens during the day, I want to make sure that routine happens, or some semblance of it. So I kind of divide and conquer, and I can make long routines and short routines. If I can, long routines are going to be the default. In that drive folder, here's a routine template. Just for the routine section. This has nothing to do with the content section of your practice day. So I break it up, and hopefully I can find time to do this long routine. And my long routine lasts anywhere from an hour to right now, an hour to an hour and a half. But if there's a day that's crazy, and right now there's not, so I'm really taking advantage of this. But if there's a day that I'm working, if I can squeeze in a short routine, and the key here between long and short is that no matter which one I'm doing, I'm still addressing basic fundamentals of the instrument. Doesn't matter if you're a classical player, a jazz player, rock player, whatever. You're addressing basic fundamentals of your instrument. So for me, trombone, brass playing, to me, it doesn't matter what genre of music you consider yourself to be or whatever. Music is music. Trombone playing is trombone playing at its core foundation. So everyone's working on their tone. Everyone's working on articulations. Those articulations may differ. Everyone's working on improving their range and flexibility and time and things like that. So, regardless of what I've got, these routines should really kind of reflect what your goals are doing. And I think that's really important, is make sure that the routines that you construct, reflect what your ultimate goal is, or help support your long or short-term goals. That's an important one. So how's everybody doing, by the way? Hopefully this is working and you can hear me and I'm not just blankly talking. So now we can get into the actual practice session. So we've gotten organized. We've come up with goals. We've come up with a plan of action, and I think that's really important because it gives you or your student direction in what you want to do. So now in the actual practice session, the first thing I do is the routine. Like I said, call it your warm-up, daily exercises, maintenance, whatever. It's the thing that has to happen every day. And hopefully you can find time to do your full routine every day. If at very worst, an abridged version of it, just because, one of my old teachers say, every day you don't play is a day you get worse. And more importantly, especially now with so many people playing, every day you don't play, you're not only getting a little worse, but someone else is playing and getting better. So there's sort of this. So like I said, depending on the instrument, I play trombone. So in this routine, I'm going to address specific fundamentals. So for me, it's long tone. The first thing I do is long tones. And what I think long tones, as a trombonist, as a brass player, just getting your air moving. And that's sort of a way for me to check my embouchure as well, to make sure that everything's happening the way I want it to happen. Everything's feeling good. I don't play long tones very high. I buzz a little bit. I do a few buzzing exercises, but I don't buzz too much. Something else we can talk about later too. So I'm doing long tones the very first thing. Like I say, I'm not playing incredibly high. I'll play low. I'll do a lot of pedal tones and things in like that false trigger register if I'm using my straight horn over there, backwards. There we go. Next, I do articulations. I do some sort of articulation workout. Working on slurring. And for me right now, just consistency of making sure I'm doing the same thing or same pattern. Slide technique is another thing that, a lot of times that's going to involve scales or things like that. Just make sure my hand is syncing up with my brain and my tongue. And then I do some range exercises. I finally get to some range. I do high range and low range. I don't just work on high range. It just wears you out. And then flexibility, a lot of times, a lot of lip slurs. I'm doing a ton of lip slurs right now. We'll get into my routine later if there's time. So anyway, like I said, long routine, so with a long routine, that should be anywhere from 30 to 90 minutes, really. Some people have less and can do it more efficiently. Right now, I'm doing a thing where I'm playing everything incredibly slow. And so when I first started, it was taking just over 90 minutes to do. Now I'm at like an hour and 10 minutes, I think. So the faster the tempo is going, the quicker I'm going. But your short routine should be like 10 to 30 minutes. And just make sure you're addressing each one of those issues every single day. Again, if you can manage to address, do a long routine every day, that's the thing you need to find time to do. So I'm in a very, right now, most people are in a very unique situation where you probably have time to do this, and you're not really getting into much of the content part of your practice day. So usually I do this routine in the morning. I do this long routine in the morning. Then I take a break, an hour and a half of just playing, and especially the things that I'm working on right now gets pretty tiring. So I take a break for a while, grab some lunch, hang out with the boys. Then later that afternoon or in the evening, I'll come down and play for another 30 minutes to an hour. So I'm playing, anywhere from maybe an hour and a half to 3 hours a day right now. And I think that's plenty for anyone, really. If you're practicing the right way and efficiently, you may not need to practice 5 hours a day, but maybe you do. Who knows? So anyway, now we get to the content area of our practice session. And that, like I said, this can be a little bit more flexible in time and what you're doing. If you're a student, maybe you're working out of method books, you're doing etudes, you're practicing solo literature for recitals or juries. Maybe you're doing ensemble prep work if you're in concert band or orchestra or jazz band or brass quintet, anything like that. You've got some ensemble prep. If you've got professional gigs outside of school, if you're in school, working on literature and getting ready for gigs. Maybe that's where you're learning patterns and learning new scales. You're doing ear training. You're learning tunes as a jazz musician or a pop musician. Maybe you're doing some solos transcription, or maybe you're just doing free play. I think free play is really important. So that's all of that stuff. Any combination can really, like I said, it's very flexible, that content area. And hopefully if you're doing the routine part correctly, the content part gets easier too, because you're just becoming a better player. So like I said, that part's really flexible. and you can add as much of that or as little of that as possible. So now another thing, once you're done with a session, I didn't do this until really late in my academic career as a student musician. Um, but I think reflection on your practice day is important. So whether that's recording yourself playing and listening back, even if it's not the whole thing, listening back to yourself a little bit can be a very sobering experience and humbling. But man, it doesn't lie. It doesn't lie at all. The other thing is keeping a practice journal. So I think it's important to kind of you give yourself some checkpoints to see where you were at a certain point. So logging what you practiced, the tempo that you practiced it at, if you're doing exercises, what range did you get to, like how is that all improving? I think it's important to document what went well during that session. Trying to stay positive and keep a positive growth mindset is important. So logging what went well, logging things that you can do to improve, logging an area of focus. So like, okay, next, tomorrow I'm doing the exact same warm up routine, but I want to focus on this. I want to focus on connecting notes a little bit better. I need to focus on moving my slide a little bit faster. I need to focus on the resonance in my low range. These all are oddly familiar for me, but what do you want to focus on the next session? And then any notable breakthroughs that happened. Like today when I was practicing, when buzzing, pedal notes on buzzing started to really come out, and they're getting fairly, the notes just above that are starting to get a little bit more resonant, where 3 weeks ago they weren't happening at all. So those are noticeable things, and those are the things that kind of keep you going, because it can be a marathon. So tips for success when you're practicing: give yourself an opportunity to succeed, first of all. So what that means is finding a good practice area. Find a place where you can focus. If you're in school, sometimes, like, by the end of my career at Wichita State, I refused to play in the practice rooms. I would always rent out a room or find another place to practice. I could not practice in those practice rooms anymore. In this room, this is usually where I practice, but if I get an opportunity and the boys aren't home or something, and I can play upstairs where there's a little bit taller ceilings and it's a little bit more resonant sounding, I like that. So finding an area where you can focus. Like I said, don't squeeze in your practice. When you're doing that schedule, if you've got a 90-minute block of time, don't try and squeeze in a 90-minute warm-up session, because that means everything has to go perfect for it to get done, or else you're just cheating yourself. The perfect example actually was yesterday. My kid had a haircut, and I wanted to get this practice routine done before we left for his haircut, and I ended up rushing, and it was out of the 3 weeks that I've been doing this new routine, it was worse than the first day. I couldn't focus. I was just thinking about getting done on time, and just, man, if I keep screwing up, I'm not going to have time to finish everything. So that's really important, is make sure you give yourself enough time to play. If you rush through, that's equal stress. That equals stress, and stress equals a lack of focus to me. Another important thing, especially in this day and age and with your students, limit the distractions. Turn this off or turn it on airplane mode. If you need play alongs, or you've got PDFs on a phone or an iPad or whatever, any sort of tablet, download it first and then put it on airplane mode, so you're not getting calls and texts and everything like that. It just distracts you from your goal, and it ends up taking longer. So limit the distractions if you can. Another thing is understand the fine line between ego and self-deprecation. You have to learn how to be an honest performer, a self-aware performer. Don't talk yourself into thinking that your session was better than it was. And that sounds a little harsh, But in the same on the on the opposite end of the spectrum, don't be so hard on yourself that it discourages you from doing anything. So there's a fine line there. Realize the success that you have, but know that there are still things you probably need to work on. So finding that fine line to me is very important, because I'll give myself a pass if I can sometimes, and then the pendulum kind of swings the other way, and it's like, okay, I got to stop giving myself a pass, and then I don't allow myself to pass anything, and then I just get into this really negative headspace that doesn't work. So, and that kind of goes in with the next thing. Music is a lifelong journey, so be patient. Be patient with it all. If you start to get discouraged, that's why I like logging things, or recording self practice, or using a practice journal. Realize that it's a long time. I'm doing a 100-day routine right now where I'm playing the same thing 100 days in a row, and every day the tempo gets one beat faster. And there are going to be days that are tougher than others. And it's nice to kind of look back and go, oh man, I can't believe, like, starting at the tempo that I started at, that feels super comfortable now. Like, so there, even though, you may have some dips and valleys in your success, it's going to gradually go up. And so, it's okay to take a moment and look back down toward, the lower part of the mountain, to look and see and appreciate where you were, but also realize that there's more to accomplish above you. So keep going. Be flexible with your routine. It's going to take time to adjust and figure out what is successful. So be okay adjusting your goals, or changing the routine, changing what you're practicing. That stuff's okay. So, and then be creative. Maybe if you're a high school or middle school student, maybe you don't have a good handle on major scales in all 12 keys, or melodic minor in all 12 keys, whatever it is, or maybe you don't have a 7-note lip slur, or you don't have a great low range, or whatever it is. But once you become comfortable with the exercises that you're doing, don't be afraid to get creative with them. You can embellish the exercises to create new ways to practice. You can combine exercises to address multiple fundamentals at once. And that can really kind of combat the burnout aspect of playing every single day, or playing the same type of thing every day. You can as musicians, we should be creative anyway. So you should always be thinking about, expanding and what can I do to be more efficient? So there's that. Stay motivated. Like I said, look back at past recordings. If you're starting to get kind of down on yourself and you don't think you're improving, listen to yourself a few weeks ago, and there's probably something to improve on. Always find the positives. So that's it right there. I was going to take you through my routine real quick, and kind of I won't play it, but I'll just talk you through it, and my thinking of how I kind of developed my routine. So it kind of goes through every single thing here. So, so here's my routine. I'm going to take that off real quick. So like I said, for me, I was feeling really good about my progress and musicianship as a player in grad school during my DMA. And as a teacher now, with everything else going on, there's 2 kids and a wife and lots of things. The opportunity to play 3 hours a day in a row is just not there. And you let yourself slip. I let myself slip out of that routine. And so I've taken this time where we're in quarantine to really, and my kids are old enough now where they kind of understand, like, oh, okay, dad's practicing, we'll give him a break for an hour or so. So I thought the first thing I did is the schedule part was pretty easy, because I don't have anything to do, and there are no gigs to prep for or anything like that. The virtual big band gigs have kind of, like, people are kind of checking out on those a little bit. There's enough of those where it's not cool anymore, I guess, and so we're not doing those as much. So anyway, I don't have to worry about the schedule. So I really thought about, okay, what do I need to do? What has been going on the last year, 2 years, 3 years in my playing that I am not happy with? And the most noticeable thing is my embouchure. My embouchure is not what it was. It's not consistent. I puff my cheeks a lot. I get this kind of like air coming out the side of my mouth, almost kind of like a subtone thing. And it's just, things aren't consistent anymore. So I thought about that. I was like, okay, I want to fix that. I want to think about improving my. I've never been great at lip slurs, even in college. Like my undergrad teacher, Russ Wyden, he'd always have me do lip slurs, and it got to a point where I could kind of BS my way through them, where I would do kind of a legato tongue. And he either didn't say anything to me or didn't realize that I was legato tonguing it. And so I never really, like, I've got a great range on both ends of the horn, but connecting them was not happening for me with just pure lip slurs. So I wanted to really improve my lip slurring. Slide speed again, and that kind of goes with like muscle memory with, scales, patterns, and things like that. If on a trombone, if you're not in tune, sometimes like if you're not completely in tune or you're just a little bit off out of the position, the notes sometimes don't speak or they're not centered very well. So I just wanted to get a little bit more consistent. So those were sort of my goals. It's like, okay, I want to reestablish a consistent embouchure. I want to improve my lip slurs. And as a soloist, I felt like I was kind of in a rut as far as playing the same type of idea. I was playing very, scale-based things. I wanted to get a little bit more vertical as a player. So I developed this, I developed this routine. It's for myself, and it's not like I came up with these exercises. These are all exercises from other people that are way better and smarter and things like that. But, so here's what I start with. Every day I start with long tones, and this is not recorded. This is not with any sort of tempo. This is as long as I need to do it. The first thing I do is I buzz these. And I don't do much buzzing. These first two exercises, I'm waving my mouse. You can't see my mouse. But these first two exercises are I buzz them and then I play them. If you notice, none of them go above a tuning B flat in the bass clef. Even that gets a little high and it starts to wear me out when I buzz. So I don't buzz much. But I buzz these and then I play these. And what I'm doing when I'm buzzing and playing these is I'm really working on making sure the corners of my embouchure or my mouth are firm. And I'm not, the second those go, that's when I start to get this. I'll show you real quick. Like I get this sort of kind of like that embouchure. And it's not good. And I don't like the way I sound with it. So doing that really helps change that. And then I turn on the metronome. Then I turn on my metronome, and like I say, I started at 81 beats per minute. Now I'm at 90. Tomorrow's 99 beats per minute, and the goal is to go 100 beats faster, which that could get probably pretty tough. And maybe there's a day where I'm like, nope, I got to repeat a day. So hopefully, like I said, my goal is to get 100 beats faster in 100 days, but I will accept getting 90 beats faster because that's still really good. I'll accept getting 80 beats faster. I'm still going to really shoot for 100, but that's that fine line between self-deprecation and ego. So put on the metronome, and I'm doing all kinds of lip slur exercises, Remington warm-up exercises, things like that. And this is custom to me. You can take this. This is available to download in bass clef and B flat treble clef for free on my website. But it's based off of for me, but you can take this as sort of a template and create whatever you need to with it. Start it at whatever tempo you want to. So I do all these lip slurs, and then I go to scales. So when I'm doing, lip slurs, I'm starting to work on flexibility and just consistency of that embouchure. I'm reinforcing that embouchure. And then I'm doing scales. I'm doing scales in all 12 keys, and I'm doing 4 different types of scales. I'm doing major scales just because there's so much stuff based off of major scales. I wanted to do major scales, and I wanted to be automatic again. So 2-octave major scales, feel comfortable, maybe I'll add a third on top and maybe a fifth below. So I'm kind of going in a 3-octave range, depending on where I'm at, do that. But with these, this is where I'm working on slide speed, and this is where I'm working on articulation. So I've snuck in, and like I said, I've combined a few things to, I've combined a few fundamentals that I want to address, and I can kill 2 birds with 1 stone by doing scales. So major scales, then I'm doing harmonic minor scales. I find myself playing harmonic minor over minor 2-5-1s all the time, so I figured I just might as well get really good at them. And then I'm doing the next 2 were scales that I wanted to just I wanted to get those in my ear a little bit better. I've used them over dominant chords. People always use them over dominant chords, which is fine. It's good. It's right. But I just wanted to get them under my fingers a little bit better and hear the sound that they are, what it sounds like to me. So I'm doing half whole diminished scales and then diminished whole tone or altered scales. And through doing this every day, you start to find on these scales, you start to find any little nugget of familiarity. So altered scales, the 7th mode of melodic minor. So just playing melodic minor a half step up or melodic minor starting on the 7th, that helps. Thinking about the first 4 notes are diminished, then you're playing whole tone back up to the tonic, little things like that. So I hear children coming too. Then after that, I get into lip slurs, and I'm doing lip slurs in all 12 keys. And I made a play along to kind of help me hear the sound, and I've changed some of the chords because on augmented, B flat augmented, I like to play B flat augmented over C7. So B flat is the 7th, so you get 7, 9, sharp 11, that kind of thing. Diminished, it's a B flat diminished chord, but I'm playing B flat diminished over a G flat 7, flat 9 chord, or a G7 flat 9. Sorry about that. So there's all different, like I say, you've got this first thing I'm playing, B flat as a root, B flat as a 5th, B flat as a 3rd, all major triads, then B flat as a root, 5th and 3rd of minor triads. And then I go full range starting on, 2 octaves, or it's starting to extend into full range where I'm playing B flat major 7, B flat dominant 7, B flat minor 7, half diminished 7, diminished 7. So I'm altering 1 note every time. And then I'm doing augmented and major minor 7, or minor major 7. Sorry about that. And then I'm doing arpeggios with extensions. So starting to hear, doing sharp 11. So I'm thinking like a major triad, a whole step, and playing the B flat major 7 or B flat dominant triad, and then adding a major triad, a whole step up. And then just adding some other sounds that I thought were interesting, and exploring different sounds and tension over dominant chords. So I do that over all 12 keys. Let me go forward here. So there's those, and then I do an Arbenz exercise, an interval exercise where I'm getting down, and this is where I'm working on slide speed. Arpeggios. Hold on, guys. Arpeggios are same type of thing where I'm extending them hopefully the full range of my instrument when I'm comfortable with it. And that's starting to happen. And then I do these arpeggio exercises. So I'm addressing, this is my routine now, and I'm doing it for 100 days. Those are what are, addressing those fundamentals every day. And then after that, I take a break and I come back and work on tunes and a lot of transcription right now. Like I said, there's no gig or ensemble prep work or anything that I'm doing. So, for me, playing mostly jazz anymore, I'm working on playing tunes and transcribing a lot. So that's basically it. If you guys have questions, you say, don't feel obligated. I did put my Venmo and PayPal info there if you feel inclined to donate to any of these classes. Like I said, I'm giving 5 classes over the next 5 days. Tomorrow's going to be about just ideas to get to start soloing for you or your students. Hold on. What's up? I'm in the middle of this. What's up?
Sorry. There's it's really cool upstairs. So when you get down, can you turn it up?
Sure. Mm-hmm. Got to turn up the heat, evidently. So there's that. Yeah, so tomorrow is beginning improv. Monday is going to be just trombone, nerd out trombone stuff. On Tuesday, or what is Tuesday? Oh man, what did I decide Tuesday was going to be? Tuesday is composition day, so I'll take you through my process of writing tunes for Project H and arranging and things like that. And then Wednesday, I'll talk about the book that I wrote as well. So if there are any questions, feel free to put them in the comments or anything like that. I'll give you guys a few. There's a little bit of a delay, I think. So if you guys have any questions about practice routines, anything, let me know, and we can just kind of open this up last little bit for questions. And there we go. Thanks, great session. See you tomorrow. That's not a question, but I'll take that. Thank you, Danny. Glad you hung out and watched. So again, tell your friends. The more the merrier, the more interaction, the better. So I'm not just yapping for 40 minutes or whatever. So any other questions? I'll give you a few more seconds. I'll grab a drink of water. All right. Well, if you do watch this later, and you have questions, put them in there, because I'll see them and I'll get to them as quick as I can. Again, tomorrow is beginning improv day, 1 o'clock right here on the Facebook page. So hope to see you guys there. Thanks so much for listening to me talk about this, and I will talk to you all soon. Take care. Bye.
Thank you.